Hi YouTube. Thank you for joining today. We're a little early. Facebook pop-up in 2 minutes. Yes? Yeah.
Do you have, no problem, just for the title? Because I got it on YouTube that I did for Facebook.
Oh, hang on. There you go. Alright, we're putting the title into our Facebook Live app. And we are going to talk about suicide today. So just stick around. That's why people will come in, and so we'll leave YouTube running a little bit in the beginning for people to come in while we get Facebook. I'll be right back in 2 minutes. It is hot outside, isn't it?
It's pretty hot, super hot.
Yeah, I was reading somewhere, they're like, I always wondered what the temperature felt like in the Middle East, and it's the same. It's exactly the same.
Yes.
So, super hot.
Yes.
Oh man. Look forward, I think it's supposed to cool down next week, I hear, allegedly.
It's pretty hot.
Ooh, it went dark. Jonna is not with us today. She is in Colorado. She might show up. Okay, we're getting ready to go live. She might show up during the Facebook Live session. She's our person. That helps. When it goes red. Disclosure Live with Brandy Austin Law. I'm Brandy Austin, and I'm here today with Dr. Philip Baiden. And Dr. Philip Baiden is an assistant professor at the University of Texas at Arlington School of Social Work, which is just 10 minutes north of here. We wanted to bring him in and have a discussion on suicide. There have been a couple suicides among celebrities recently, and I know on my Facebook page I've had people that I know or have been connected with commit suicide. I would say a little bit at an increasing level over the past couple of years. And it's hard to understand why people do it, where they're coming from, what you can do, and if you are the person feeling suicidal, what resources and what's out there for you. So we wanted to bring you in and kind of have a discussion. So we understand that these are not isolated incidents, celebrity suicides. It's not isolated to celebrities, right? So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about what you do, and then we'll kind of get into a discussion of the different factors.
Thank you very much. It's a great opportunity to be here this afternoon to have this conversation about a very important topic. As you rightly said, I am an assistant professor in the School of Social Work at the University of Texas at Arlington. My research focuses mostly on adverse childhood experiences and how that influence health and mental health behaviors. And one of the mental health behaviors that I focused recently on has to do with suicide behaviors. My PhD dissertation was on non-suicidal self-injury, or what we typically call self-harm. So,
like cutting.
Yes, cutting.
Yes.
That's often typically how some individuals, particularly adolescents and young adults, they start gradually with engaging self-harm or cutting, and then eventually they become used to the pain and they move on to other more serious life-threatening suicidal behaviors. So that's what I typically do. I also done some work looking at what happened among those who experience various forms of maltreatment and sexual abuse when they disclose. How does that influence their suicidal behavior? Does that help or does that exacerbate it? So those are some of the things that I've done in the recent past.
Okay. Well, then you'll have a lot of knowledge to help us kind of understand a little better about what's going on. Okay, so I know a lot of people were in shock when they heard that Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain committed suicide. Because on the outside, it appears they have it all. They have a successful career, they have family or friends, money, so money's not an issue. What statistically are the types of people affected by suicidal thoughts?
Well, thank you. You're right that recent incident of suicide has woken the nation about the rampant incident of suicide. We do recall recently the incident of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, and what comes to people's mind has to do with that. How could this be that these are celebrities, they are famous, they are well-to-do, and if we're talking about social support and connectedness, you will imagine that wherever they go, they will have it. That what at all could be it. So those are some of the things that start triggering a lot of individuals since, especially when Anthony Bourdain incident happened.
Mm-hmm.
I've had calls and complaints that, is this real? How could this be? So this goes to tell us that when we're looking at the phenomenon of suicide, we could tell that it is, when you look at a lot of the risk factors, it affects everybody. Even though some individuals have a higher tendency, they are more at risk of engaging suicidal behaviors than others. But what we witness in the recent weeks tells us that suicide is a phenomenon that goes beyond what the average person usually think, that, oh, it is those who are poor or those who are less connected, those who do not have anybody. So it once again reminds us that when we're looking at suicide, we need to pay attention that it's perhaps those who we do not expect to engage or to commit suicide are those that are at risk of that, and that should alert us about various things that we need to do.
So anyone can be affected by suicidal thoughts or be in a situation where they begin to feel suicidal. It's not limited to any person. So, you have to look out for everyone, not just
absolutely
the male or female. It can be anyone,
yes.
Rich, poor, anyone. So who is likely to attempt suicide?
Yeah, so when we look at suicide attempt, there are a number of things that we need to identify, and this will help us a lot in knowing who is at risk or who is more likely to commit or to engage in suicide. And one of the main risk factors that we know for suicide attempts has to do with suicidal ideation. That is, feeling suicidal, those who feel that nothing is going well for them, they have been thinking about death or thinking about killing themselves.
So suicide, just real quick, suicidal ideation isn't just daydreaming of always wanting to commit suicide. It's preoccupied with thoughts
of killing yourself. And what we do know is that those who engage in that often they go on to formulate a plan and then they attempt. Mm-hmm. And when we're looking at suicide ideation leading to suicide attempt, what we do know based on the scientific literature has to do with the fact that in terms of gender differences, we do know that females often ideate more, they consistently engage in thoughts of suicide, they attempt more than males. Mm-hmm. However, when it comes to actual suicide, we see more, I don't want to call it success, but we see suicide as a phenomenon higher among males than females. There are a number of reasons that have been attributed to why this could be, with the fact that males plan very well and they execute at a goal.
Whereas they also use methods that are more likely to
be more harmful.
Yeah.
So, for example, firearm by suicide is more prevalent among males than females, whereas females tend to engage in poisoning or overdose, self-medicate, or suffocation. So those are some of the things that account for the gender difference when we look at an attempt. But I also want to point out that when we look at suicidal ideation as a strong predictor of suicide attempts and completed suicide, one of the other risk factors that we need to pay attention to has to do with depression and anxiety, mm-hmm. which are the key drivers of suicidal behaviors. So depression, anxiety, we can also think of individuals who are having difficulty sleeping, We can think of substance use, particularly alcohol is a huge risk factor for alcohol use. There are a number of systematic reviews done showing that when you look at individuals who completed suicide, a significant number of them had had alcohol 12 to 18 hours prior to the suicide attempt. So
this brings up a good question. How long does the alcohol affect a person's ability to think clearly?
Well, that's a good question. The literature shows that individuals who consistently abuse alcohol, they use alcohol as a coping mechanism to deal with depression, trauma, or past history of abuse. They continue to engage in that, and when it comes to suicide attempt, they then feel like there is no other way, and they engage in excessive alcohol use. And we know that excessive alcohol use affects the functioning of the brain, how the brain operates, and when it comes to making some judgment or some decisions, it impairs our decision, and that potentially could lead to more suicidal behaviors.
So what warning signs should you look for in someone? Because I know that there were a lot of people close to the celebrities that passed away that said, we didn't know anything was wrong until it just happened. Specifically with Anthony Bourdain, it just happened. So what can we look for in other people? And we'll talk a little bit later about how we can help. So what can we look for?
Yeah, so this is very important. When we're looking at the warning signs of suicide, some of the things that the literature shows that we need to pay attention to, one has to do with loneliness, that we need to watch for those who feel that they are burden on others. They all of a sudden start talking about the fact that life is no longer worth living, or I'm a burden on others. Those who feel lonely, it's also something that we need to watch for. Those who consistently engage in thoughts about life not worth living, or those who do not get enough sleep. Those are warning signs. And when we look especially of loneliness, one may think that individuals who are in certain positions should not feel lonely. But we do know, for instance, in North America, that 1 in 4 individuals are lonely. In spite of the social media or the support that one may think about. So what strikes us researchers, especially when we look at recent incident, has to do with the fact that even though individuals may have a broader set of social network that they can draw on, it's very important that we have somebody that we can confide in. We have somebody that we can actually go to when something happens. It could be your wife, your husband, your partner, or it could be somebody that you have a trusting relationship with, that you can confide in that person, so that person knows that this is what you're going through. Because
I would make the argument that maybe social media has increased the feeling of loneliness, because you have a bunch of people out there, but most of the people online aren't really
not connected.
Yeah, there's no actual connection.
Yes.
So it may appear on the outside like you have someone, and then when you really are feeling down and you don't, it can be overwhelming.
Yes, certainly. Social media has its plus and minuses. There are very advantages to it. It connects people, but beyond that, it's when it comes to having a confidant, somebody that you can confide in, you can have intimate personal conversation with, somebody that you can call at midnight or 2 a.m. and the person will say, yes, let's talk, not that, oh, can you call the following morning? Those are very important, and you less likely to find that in social media. You get all the glamour, all the likes, and all the followings, but it's very also important that we pay attention to that. And when it comes to celebrities or high-profile individuals, this could be ignored, because one will feel like if somebody has over 100,000 followers or it's well connected, there is no way that person. But perhaps that is somebody who actually needs that level of connection more. So for those who are, it's also important that we reach out. We often do say that those who are depressed or those who are feeling anxious should make the effort to reach out. But what depression sometimes does is that it clouds your mind, your judgment, that makes it difficult for you to see the need to reach out. So when individuals who are connected or who are friends or have a sort of support network, they can then call occasionally to check on their colleagues, or they can just have conversation that will make people feel belong, will make people feel that there is purpose for living and there is a need to live.
So people that are lonely, and I guess maybe people that are sad or maybe had
Depressed.
something happen to them recently, depression. Is there anything else we can look for in our colleagues or friends that may be a sign or symptom, something worse that could come?
Well, if somebody has had a suicidal ideation before or suicidal attempt before, it's a major red flag that we need to work on that, and we need to be in touch with people. We need to refer them for counseling and for mental health services. One other thing that we also have to do better is that to take away the stigma associated with seeking help. Because
I was just thinking, you don't know whether a colleague or a friend or a new acquaintance has attempted suicide before or thought about it, because they're not going to just say it.
Yeah, it's something that unless you, again, this comes to having a confidant.
Yeah.
Unless you have that level of close, intimate, or personal relationship with somebody, those when some of those information will come up. But if you do not, it can be very difficult to get some of those information.
And just because you don't have that close relationship initially with someone, and you feel like they may be lonely or sad, that doesn't mean you shouldn't reach out, right?
Not at all.
You can be the one that helps. They just need someone to feel
Connected to.
And you only feel connected to somebody if you reach out. You have to start somewhere.
Yes.
So I know that if I see someone that appears to be lonely, maybe sad, or if I know them personally has had these thoughts before, what should I do if I feel like they're going to a bad place again?
Well, you could refer a person for counseling, and as I was talking previously, that seeking counseling should be seen as normal. What we do when you feel sick, you go to see your general practitioner. The same we should be able to seek for mental health services, we should seek for psychological services, and take away the stigma that is associated with mental health, because especially in certain communities, as minorities, Black and Hispanic community, there is a whole lot of stigma associated with seeking mental health services, that individuals are going through serious traumatic experiences, or they feel depressed, they feel stressed, but they for some reason do not want to seek services because they will be perceived as being weak or not being strong enough. And we need to do away with those, that we can all encourage those who are going through life challenges to seek help.
And therapists can offer guidance through the life challenges. So if somebody close to you passes away, or maybe you have a financial setback, lose your business, lose your job, not everyone has the ability to or cope or figure out what to do next. But a therapist can help you kind of get through the hurt and anger to get to the next step, correct?
Yes, there are various interventions that therapists can provide that have been tried and tested to help individuals who have been suicidal before. So those interventions have been known to be successful, and they can help. Another thing that I would like to stress has to do with physical activity. Exercise is one great therapy or form of prevention activity that is known to buffer the effect of many health and mental health outcomes, including suicidal behaviors, because individuals who exercise frequently, they live well, they take away all the stress and all the life challenges and depression that they may be going through. So exercise, it's one thing that
situation where they're feeling suicidal, maybe inviting them on a walk to the park or something like that, and talking as you're doing a physical activity. I know it takes like 30 minutes a day or something, right?
Yeah, an average of 10 minutes of exercise or walk, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, when we look at social support, tying into physical activity and walking, for example. It can be very difficult sometimes to motivate yourself as an individual to go to the gym or to engage in some physical activity.
Yeah.
But when you have a partner, when you have a buddy that you feel some of accountability to, that can also energize you to get up when you don't feel like getting up, and it can make you get outdoor and do something that will take your minds away from all the challenges, all the thoughts that are clouding your mind. It makes you feel very refreshed, because beyond feeling okay, we can see that social support or individuals who have someone they can talk to tend to is very helpful. It helps in individuals who are having difficulty quitting smoking. So when we have individuals who feel very depressed and are suicidal, an activity may be something that they may do, because what we can tell also is that those who are feeling suicidal, something that we often see is they withdraw from what they normally do. All of a sudden, things don't interest them again. If somebody is known to like soccer or yoga, somebody does some of activity regularly to keep him or herself going, all of a sudden the person will start withdrawing from that. Those are signs that something could be happening, and it may be okay to occasionally check in just to find out how things are going, because there may be something going that one may not be aware of. So when you see those individuals withdrawing from what they are very passionate about, all of a sudden the interest is no longer there. It's good to have those conversations. Again, coming back to, if you have a confidant or if you have a close relationship with somebody, this is when you will get to know some of this things. Beyond that, it could be sometimes very difficult.
And even if you don't have a close relationship, reach out. Sometimes they just need to feel like someone sees them.
Yes.
So I wanted to do this show today because suicide and suicidal thoughts affect the legal industry, and we'll talk about some of the other industries, but they affect the legal industry tremendously. In fact, rates of depression among lawyers is actually 3.5 times higher than the national average. The percentage of attorneys with suicidal thoughts is nearly 3 times higher than the national average. And 1/5 of attorneys have a drinking problem and demonstrate some symptoms of anxiety. Now, I'll put in the comments, in Texas, there is a place you can turn to for help that's not related to the Texas State Bar Ethical Committee. So you can feel free and comfortable reaching out. But this is common in high stress professions, correct?
Absolutely. And this is what sometimes people have difficulty understanding, that why will an attorney, a lawyer, or a professor, why will an investment banker all of a sudden commit suicide? It's sometimes people don't see that, or why would somebody be thinking that life is not worth living if you are that high profile? But the reality is that those professions are high demanding. They come with a lot of stress, and we do know that stress has a strong link with suicidal behavior. So professors, graduate students, and lawyers, investment bankers, they are at a significant rate of engaging suicidal behavior. So it's something that the general public needs to know, and those in those professions also should know and feel okay to seek counseling and mental health services.
Absolutely. I can't speak to other professions, but in the legal profession, people come to us when they're having a problem, and we help them fix problems a lot of times, or get a recovery for a new injury or something, but very rarely do people go to an attorney for fun. So we are constantly affected with deadlines and the stress of our clients, and a lot of attorneys came into the profession to help people. It's just a lot of, when you first start, I wasn't aware myself of how strenuous it can be, but there's a lot of people, a lot of clients, and they all have serious life-changing issues that are occurring in their life. And you take on the responsibility of helping them through that. It's not just one person, It's a lot.
Yes.
So there aren't a lot of resources, and there's not a lot of talking about the stress that lawyers have, especially when you're new in the profession. So, but there is a place to go for help, and we'll put that information in there. Okay, so what have you found to be helpful for someone who is suicidal? So if someone out there is having thoughts and maybe they don't have someone to reach out to, or they don't know that they have someone to reach out, what has helped people like that?
Yeah, what helps is calling your mental health practitioner, or if you don't, calling your general practitioner, calling a 911, calling a suicide hotline. Those you could be referred for appropriate services, and those are known to be very helpful. They are, as I said, there are a number of interventions. We know about cognitive behavioral therapy as one of the cutting edge treatment intervention that is known to help individuals who are feeling suicidal. We have mindfulness and dialectic therapy, all known to be very helpful. So those who are feeling suicidal, when they reach the appropriate services, they could be connected to a therapist who could work with them. It's also very important that individuals who are in high stress profession take time to have self-care. It's very important that you're in a helping profession, helping others. We sometimes forget that we also need to have self-care before we can help others. So we take on an additional burden, and there comes a time that we need to pause, we need to slow down, have a self-care, have an introspection before we can carry on.
I do try to consistently remind other people here that it is high stress, and you do have to all kind of have a balance in our life, especially if there's a high stress environment. A balance will help kind of even things out and give you downtime, because you can't consistently operate at a high level for a long period of time without...
It will catch up with you.
It will. It will. So what helps people that are suicidal begin to feel like life is livable again?
In a study that we did recently, trying to understand those who had attempted suicide before, we wanted to see what is helping them thrive. We realized that those individuals who are thriving tend to be free from mental illness. They also are married or living with somebody. We also found that they attend religious services occasionally with the idea that they feel connected to a community, or among the Christians, they do feel that whatever challenges or problem they're going through, it will face off. So there is a purpose for living. And we also found that they had no history of childhood adversity. So physical, sexual abuse, neglect, and growing up in a poverty-stricken neighborhood, those are the things that we found to be very helpful in terms of helping them thrive in those who have been ever suicidal.
Interesting. So it's really about connection, because you mentioned joining a church or having a spouse or something, which is all something that involves another person that allows you to share.
Absolutely.
So the first step is probably to find someone to confide in.
Yes.
And
it's
important to note you can pay someone to do that, right? A therapist.
Yeah, therapists could do that. It's even if you don't, those who have pets, it's also a way that you could feel connected to your family, and that is also known to be very helpful. It's very productive. It also keeps you very active, especially if you have a pet that makes you be outdoor and be very active. So it's more about having a connection, and through that you have a thriving life. It helps you with your depression and feeling anxious.
So get a big dog who needs to go on a walk, but as a puppy, so they love you. Okay, one last thing I have heard a lot of people say, it is so selfish of that person to commit suicide, and I wanted to address that that's not how the suicidal person feels. They, and my understanding is that they feel like they're a burden, and that whomever they're around, or their family, or whoever cares for them or is with them, will be relieved of the burden if they're no longer here, correct?
Absolutely, that's very right. That individuals who are feeling suicidal, one of the signs is that they perceive themselves to be a burden onto others. So they have the idea that if I take my life, then others will be free. So it is not the other way around, and it's one of the strongest indication when people feel that they are a burden onto others, and it's very concerning that one will have to feel. We all depend on each other. We have some dependability on each other for survival and in order to cope with life. But when it gets to a point where individuals feel that they are burdened onto somebody, then it can be very life-threatening.
Okay, so keep an eye out for people that are lonely, people that feel like they're a burden, and they'll make comments from time to time.
To suggest, yes.
Not everyone, but you'll hear little off comments.
Yes. You generally hear or pick signals as to what somebody's going through, or somebody's engaging in certain behaviors as a result of things that may have happened. So you do hear you do hear comments or ideas that suggest that this is it. But there are some individuals who also, because they keep a lot of things to themselves, they don't reach out, they harbor a lot within themselves. And those are individuals who typically have had a lot of trauma, they've had a lot of abuse, that they internalize the abuse and all the stress that comes from the abuse. They internalize so much that they don't want to reach out, they don't tell people their plans or what they're going through, and all of a sudden they engage in suicide. So there are some individuals like that, but you typically see warning signs that this is what somebody is going through. There's somebody, for all of a sudden the person no longer attend things that the person used to be very passionate about. So those warning signs, we need to pay careful attention to them.
And one more thing I thought of, postpartum depression doesn't mean you want to kill your kids. There's a misconception because of Susan Smith back in, I think, the 90s. She drove off a bridge, I think, and or sent her car off a bridge, and her 2 children died. And then women think, well, they don't suffer from postpartum depression because they don't want to kill their kids. They love their kids, but they are affected. And it's important to know that some of that can be just temporary, and a simple call to your doctor can help that, right?
Yes.
Postpartum depression, you see a lot of people in really bad spaces, and not necessarily because they're lonely. It's completely hormonal.
Yes, hormonal changes that comes with childbirth. So it's something that doctors are screening for regularly, and when they see signs, they're able to help. If in some instances that those signs, they don't pick those signs, it should be seen as something that is hormonal, it will phase out, and again, you're going through that, you have to know that this is, women go through that generally after childbirth.
So just pick up the phone and call your doctor. And it's something that they're trained and completely understand and can address. So, okay. So if you feel like someone is going to commit suicide right away, call 911. They are equipped to help this.
Call the general practitioner, a mental health counselor, connect the person to mental health services.
You can go to the ER at the hospital, right?
Yes.
You can also call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's 1-800-273-8255, and we'll put that in the comments again. You can Google it. I believe they have a website. You can text them, you can call them, whatever you need to do. But you can also just reach out to someone. If you feel like they're sad, you can reach out to them. If you're sad, you can reach out to someone who seems kind. And it can, there are a lot of people out there that do take the time. I know that in the news it feels like everyone's angry at each other, but there are a lot of people out there who do want to help, and they do want to listen. So you are not alone. You can call a plethora of people, doctor, 911, the suicide prevention line. You can call a friend, and they can, or maybe even the clerk at the grocery store who's friendly to you, right?
Oh.
It doesn't have to be anybody specific, just someone.
Somebody, yes, just someone that you could talk to.
Yes. So thank you for joining us. If people have more questions or want to look into your research further, how can they find that?
Yes, if they go to www.uta.edu/ssw and search for Philip Baiden, they will get in touch with me and they can look at some of the work I've done and things that I'm doing, particularly among children and adolescents with a history of childhood abuse.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Brandy Austin, and if you have any questions or any thoughts, feel free to comment below. You can also find us online at brandyaustinlaw.com or give us a call, 817-841-9906. We will, and here is the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program. It's called TLAP, 1-800-343, TLAP, there's a missing number there. It is 100% confidential. That means they're not going to reach out to your clients. They're not going to reach out to the state bar. They're going to help you if you feel like you need some help. If you're stressed, if you feel like you can't do it, overwhelmed, if you're drinking more than 3 or 4 drinks a day, maybe give them a call. Drinking can lead to suicidal thoughts, and I know it can be hard to stop if you feel like it's bringing you comfort, because people search for comfort. But we'll put all this information on our Facebook page, and you can find it there. And we will see you next week at 2 o'clock for Disclosure Live with Brandy Austin Law. Thanks. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was really good.
On the other side.